poll. Do we care about these things, or are we creating an isolationist worldview? Because that 2% of GDP will return confidence to the military. That's an increasing budget. £1 billion a year more every year for the military to have these imaginative ideas, to restructure our forces, to invest in defence engagement, to not be scrimping and saving around the edges, but to give us again the confidence that we need as a nation.
Gisela Stuart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I'm following on from 3 excellent speeches where I find very little to disagree with. And probably even the one thing I would disagree with, the member for Billericay's view of our misguided interventions. Maybe it wasn't so much the fact that we intervene was misguided, it was the way we carried it through, and we usually didn't carry it through with sufficient stamina and with sufficient commitment to what we needed to do. I also want to really pay tribute to the member for Merthyr Tydfil, who served on the Defence Select Committee, who I think provided us with extraordinary insights at times. Occasionally we wished we could edit some of it a little bit quicker, but we would rib him on that mercilessly at times. But I think the whole committee learned from his very long-term strategic way of looking at things and pulling it together. And I do wonder whether it wouldn't have been well for the entire defence team to not only have to listen to the debate today, because by looking around the chamber, I think it will turn out to be a debate worth listening to. It was the same on the defence spending, the last debate we had, where every single speech contributed something. And I don't think the ministerial team, even if they do take in what these benches on both sides are saying, make it clear that they take any note of some of the pieces of friendly advice that are being passed on to them. And a classic example, not just the defence, was yesterday's Prime Minister's question time. When I raised with the Prime Minister the 2% target, which was he was the one who at the Welsh summit was lecturing other countries that they should step up to the plate, and I invited him that he might just feel a tiny bit embarrassed. All he could come back with was some reference to the SMP. It simply, defence is not a part of you. It is a part where this House really has a collective responsibility, and it's the fact that we require backbench debates to bring this House together to talk about something which really the government ought to encourage to talk about, and it is very rare. But I just want to come back to why the 2% matter. And we all agree that this is it's an arbitrary figure. But it is part of an international commitment. It is part of Article 5. And Article 5, whilst it does not mandate a particular kind of response, if we go on like this, we will not be able to have any other response than sanctions. But we will not have an ability to militarily respond other than via the Americans. And it is deeply, deeply irresponsible for each one of the mainland European NATO members to keep cutting on their defence, keep telling their publics that their aspirations have not changed, but because we're all going to do it so much smarter now, and we're going to do it in incorporation, we will continue to deliver more by investing less. A few years ago in the States, someone in the Pentagon referred to other European countries as no good, crummy allies. And if we go on this trajectory, we will join the ranks of no good, crummy allies. And I do not want to see that day. Because the member for Billericay talked about national and international interests. I would add to that national and international responsibilities. And if we wish to be that significant player in the world, then in order to fulfill those international interests, we have to have not only capacity, but also reliability and steadiness in that. And that takes me to the last point, because I really don't want to repeat the speech I did last week. And that is about political leadership. Defence, it is true, defence is not a vote winner. I actually wouldn't like to live in a country where people would demonstrate on the streets to demand more weapons, to demand military action. It is by the very nature that our publics will wish to have peace. But it is one of those areas where leadership has to show that they are responsive to the need for defence of the realm and the international responsibility. Certainly.
Very grateful to the Honourable Lady. I think she's making a characteristically wise set of observations, and I think we all agree on the 2%. But does she recognise also that leadership is not just about the implications of calling on all NATO members to match that 2%, but also calling for effective use of that 2%? Because for many people, they are concerned that 2% in itself, if not spending that money wisely, is not really the end of the story. We need to be sure that money is being spent properly.
It's absolutely right. It has to be spent properly. But also, the 2% commitment, which sends the signals and gives the services and the supply chain its certainty of what's going to happen, it is also no good to try and massage the box and suddenly put in war pensions so we arrive at the 2%, and it is absolutely meaningless. So I said I will be brief, and I will simply say 2% is part of our North Atlantic Treaty commitment. It is part of our commitment that we have a capacity to respond to an Article 5 threat, and it is up to this House, across the parties, and particularly to our front benches, to show some leadership so that we bring our voters with us on that commitment, because without that, it simply will not happen.
Sir Malcolm.
I agree very much with what the Honourable Lady has just said, and I want to pay a particular tribute to the very impressive and remarkable speech we got from the Chairman of the Defence Select Committee.